That looks pretty serious.
Well, it is serious.
Yeah.
The fact that he's still acting. No, we'll get into that later.
Yeah.
But we do have the man of the hour. He's in the city of Chicago. The gunshots have stopped for the weekend, I think, I hope. And he joins us right now, Siafa Lewis at NBC. It's Channel 5, right, in Chicago, Siafa?
Yes, sir. Mr. Bruno, long time, first time. Pleasure to talk to you.
Well, thank you so much. I'm happy for your success. I remember. I think I tweeted something, and then you got back to me, and then I followed you, and then you wrote back and said you were a fan of the show and a fan of me. How would you even know who I am?
I grew up in South Jersey, Pennsauken, Cherry Hill, Marlton area, so I listened to 610 WIP.
Oh.
From the time I was 10 years old to the time I left for New York when I was 27, 28 to take my first job in my career up there. So, and even then and to this day, I still listen to WIP via the podcast. So I've been a long-time fan of the station. You're one of the guys I listen to tons and tons and tons. So I was honored when you responded to a tweet that John Clark, who's at NBC in Philly, initially tweeted.
Exactly. Now, were you there Pennsauken Mart days, though? Because that's one of my favorite places back in the day.
Absolutely. I know Pennsauken Mart very well. right by close to the high school, I believe, right?
Exactly. All right, Siafa, now, so you're in Chicago. Obviously, another great sports town like the Philly area, like all the big cities. You know, Chicago's got 2 baseball teams, 1 football team, 1 basketball team. And so what's the word right now there? Because certainly baseball looks like it's coming back. What are people in Chicago talking about sports-wise? Are they finally convinced that they're going to see the Cubs and White Sox actually play baseball this summer?
I think there are a lot of questions. I mean, I think most big cities sports fans have questions about whether or not COVID-19 will interfere with the plans for a return to play. I mean, if you look at the Phillies, what do they have? 2 more guys today?
Yep.
They had 4 or 5 guys last week, 2 staff members or 4 staff members, 2 more guys today. And my big thing is these guys have been spread out, and they're just now contracting it. What happens when they're all together in one space?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Big fear.
But, the other thing, from the other perspective, everybody looks at numbers, and Dr. Fauci was talking about it again yesterday about there may be a vaccine by the end of the year. But you look at the numbers, and it seems that there's more testing, and therefore we're seeing people under the age of 45 who are contracting it because they're getting tested, and that's the group that's out there younger, supposedly not as susceptible as elderly people or people with, pre-existing conditions. And so I look at it and I see that the mortality rate is going down. It's still well under 1% of the population. There's a 99% chance that if you get it, and you're an athlete especially, and you're in your 20s and you're in the prime of your life, that you're not going to die as a result of it.
Yeah, I think one of the underreported parts of this entire pandemic is the healthier an organism that you are, the more likely you are to beat it. And they won't report that. They keep talking about the age factor. It's about how healthy you are. Mm-hmm. Because an older person who's healthy can beat it. That's why people who with pre-existing conditions are so susceptible to it, because they're not as healthy and because of how the virus attacks your organism, your system. So health is a key component of it. But the other problem I have, or the question I have really is, okay, so you have all these athletes. Some of them will get it, some of them won't get it. Some of them will get it and be asymptomatic. They won't have as bad symptoms. But what about the training staff and the coaches and the managers who, by and large, are in their 50s and 60s?
Exactly. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, that was the big concern down with the NBA guys going down to the bubble. Remember, at first, the commissioner said, I'm worried about the coaches over 60, and now the coaches over 60 went crazy and said, what? What? Because some of the best teams have coaches over 60. What are you going to tell those guys?
Hop is what, 74, 75?
Exactly.
Looks amazing, but geez.
Yeah. Hey,
I do have some very close friends who have been saying the last 24 hours there aren't going to be any team sports in 2020. I mean, that's a drastic, extreme take, but when you see these little outbreaks here and there, it does make you wonder.
Well, that's where I was going to go with football too, because I know Chicago's Bulls will not be represented in the basketball bubble, and nor will I guess the Blackhawks. They're not in the.
No, the Blackhawks are in the playoffs. The Blackhawks and the Montreal Canadiens are the two worst teams.
Oh, okay, but they will make it.
Okay.
All right, but it's very highly unlikely that they would probably advance. So the real idea, I guess, here is with Cubs baseball, if that happens, and you forward it to the Chicago Bears. I mean, are people getting excited about a football season, or are they sort of like some of your friends saying, I don't even think we're going to see football at Soldier Field this year?
Oh, I think sports fans are so starved for real sports, and especially this year, a make-or-break season for Mitch Trubisky, with Nick Foles in tow, and Foles' history with DiFilippo and with Nagy. I mean, I think fans really want to see what can materialize, because that defense got better. That defense is better than it was. Well, I can't say it was better than it was 2 years ago, but they've got the pieces. They added Robert Quinn, a pass rusher from the Cowboys on the other side of Khalil Mack. That makes the linebacking core better. That makes the secondary better. I think fans are dying to see what this defense can do. And another year of Mitch with Nagy and Nick Foles to push him. I think fans really, really, really want to see what this Bears team can do.
Siafa Lewis, NBC5 in Chicago, talking Chicagoland area sports. And you look at the situation where we had the story last week, what John Clark mentioned, the room, and everybody talks about the quarterback room. That became sort of like a running joke around here. Who's got the best quarterbacking room in the NFL? Well, John DiFilippo says we got the best room, because you got Nick Foles with a new baby boy, and you got all these other guys in there. Oh, is that? I mean, that's cool to have the quarterbacks and their players all be on the same page. We would hope every team has the quarterback coach and everybody and the offensive coordinator on the same page. Is that something that people are talking about in Chicago as much as they did here?
No. I think when it comes to Mitch Trubisky, it's a 50-50 proposition. You've got the fans who've supported him and who are, by and large, just the eternal optimists, so they believe that he can become something. Every time he completes a pass, like, look, there it is, there it is, there it is. And you've got the guys who are like, Ryan Pace blew it. He could have had Deshaun Watson. He could have had Patrick Mahomes. He chose the worst of the three, and they're done with him. The quarterback room thing, it's cute, and it worked out in Philly because you had Carson Wentz in what would have been an MVP season. You had Nick Foles, who was in the perfect situation for him. He was about to quit football, got talked back into it. Zero pressure, zero expectations. People forget that he stunk those first 2-3 games when he filled in for Carson Wentz. It didn't click until the Minnesota game. He wasn't lights out against Atlanta. They won that game 15-13 with a Julio Jones, Matt Ryan incompletion on the last play of the game. So let's not get crazy here with the quarterback room stuff. I love Nick Foles for what he did for my Eagles. He will always be near and dear to my heart. But Nick Foles has been wildly inconsistent in his career, and he hasn't done anything outside of Philly, has he?
No, you're absolutely right.
Wait a minute. Do they hate on you in Chicago that they know that you're an Eagle fan?
Well, I'm not a stupid human being, so I'm telling you guys that they are my Eagles. But I don't go on TV flaunting. I mean, listen, I've been here for 6 years now. That Eagles Bears playoff game in, January 2019?
The double
that
doink.
That was one of the hardest professional weeks of my career. And that game, from halftime on, I'm sitting in my office with the sports team, and I didn't say a peep. I mean, the Eagles score the touchdown. Golden Tate scores the touchdown. I say nothing, and I'm as emotive as it gets. I'm a jump around, scream kind of guy. That field goal goes up, the double doink. I didn't say a peep because I know how much it meant to my guys who are from Chicago. So I cover Chicago sports. I love Chicago. My family's here. We've been here for 6 years. You don't choose where you're from. I'm a Philadelphia guy. I always will be. But I love and respect the people here.
Let's just call it for what it is. Ryan Pace did blow it when he traded up for Mitchell Trubisky.
No doubt.
He absolutely did blow it.
And he got lucky with the Khalil Mack trade. Now,
yeah.
He gets credit for it because he made it work. But the Raiders traded Khalil Mack to the Bears because they thought the Bears would be worse and get a better draft pick.
Now, the interesting thing, Siafa, when you talk about the cities, and obviously Chicago's a great sports town, and Wrigley Field, if you haven't been there, it's one of those bucket list places you have to go, and it's such a great, vibrant city of all the different things you can do there. But you talk about people, like the White Sox and the Cubs. There are very few cities. You got, the Bay Area. You got Chicago,
New York.
and New York. I mean, there's not many cities where you have two baseball teams in one area, but the allegiances are so locked in from generation to generation. How bizarre is that for you when you come from a city where there's only one baseball team and everybody's on board with them?
Well, I can't say I buried the lead, but I also worked in New York. New York was my first TV job. My TV career began in New York working at SNY, Sportsnet New York. So I've done the whole Mets-Yankees thing way before I got to Chicago. And I try really hard to be it is my job. It's not my job to be a homer. To be as objective as possible when it comes to the Cubs and the White Sox. So there are times where I'll lead with the White Sox, where most guys or girls may lead with the Cubs, and vice versa, just because you've got White Sox fans watching, you've got Cubs fans watching. I can't play favorites. I can't, cover one team or talk about one team more than the other. So I'm, especially as somebody who was not born here, I'm extremely cognizant of that reality.
Well, outside of where they may live in the city, like the North Siders typically like the Cubs, South Side, Chicago, the White Sox, is there another distinct difference that you can say that guy's a White Sox fan and that guy's a Cubs fan?
You're putting me on the spot. All right, so
people are listening all over on Sirius XM, so I don't want you to get in trouble in Chicago now.
That's his concern.
When you go to do the sports tonight on Channel 5 on NBC 5 in Chicago, you're going to have people like texting you all over the place. What's the idea? You ripping Chicago on a station that originates in Philly but is heard all over the world.
Oh, man, I know for a fact that you've got fans of all stripes and colors that like both teams. If you were going to stereotype, your comparing it now to Philadelphia, your Villanova type, that's blue blood, that's a Cubs fan.
Okay.
And the guy from South Philly, he'd be a White Sox fan. So the people from Philadelphia know what I just said. The people who aren't from Philly don't know, and that's the whole point of me doing what I just did.
Exactly right. That's you talk about a brilliant
well
way
done.
to get out of that. Yeah, and you nailed it.
Yeah.
Although I don't know, man, there's a lot of Cub fans who aren't exactly main line types.
I've
been to Murphy's Bleachers. I've been to all those bars there in Wrigleyville. They're not all like main line guys who are wearing, Sperry Docksiders and.
Well, you know why?
Why?
So Wrigley Field is so unique in this country because it is literally in the midst of a neighborhood.
Yep.
And that neighborhood is where a lot of people think Manayunk. A lot of people who graduated college, young people, congregate in that area. So when the Cubs aren't doing well, they're the ones still going to the game. They're the ones still going to the bars. Those bars are always packed, whether the Cubs are playing or not. And I think that's why you see that. But if you go to a Cubs game and you look at the lower bowl, it's Villanova.
No, I hear you. Siafa Lewis, NBC 5 in Chicago, covering the local sports scene there. And the whole now Horace Grant, believe it or not, how many weeks are we past the Last Dance?
Oh, yeah.
And there's still stuff going on. Now, Horace Grant's going crazy lately, right?
Horace Grant was going crazy with a couple episodes left after the series. Now, I actually did an interview with Craig Hodges, who was not in the piece at all, which is crazy because he was one of the guys who was on the team when I believe either when Jordan was drafted or right after Jordan got drafted. He's a guy who's actually from Chicago, three-time three-point champion in the All-Star Weekend three-point champion, and talk about Colin Kaepernick and social justice. That was Craig Hodges before it was in vogue to be that way. And he and I had a very lengthy conversation about why he feels he wasn't in the docu-series, whatever you want to call it. And he, to this day, is extremely close friends with Horace Grant. So I think a lot of guys who played on that team weren't happy about the way MJ allowed it to be portrayed as though, how shall I say it, almost as though he was infallible. And one of the things Craig Hodges said is we all know that we all had our dirt, and we kind of closed the ranks. We didn't talk about it, where MJ put it out there, like the whole thing with the cocaine train or whatever. A lot of guys felt really, really dirty about that he put that out there that way.
Do fans in Chicago still care about the NBA if the Bulls aren't interested or aren't in the playoff mix?
Well, the Bulls have been.
It's been for a long time.
Well, for let's see, when I got here 2014, they were still competitive. They played the Cavs in the Eastern Conference, not final 2014, semifinals. 2015 made the playoffs. But the last 3-4 years, this incessant rebuilding where they get pieces that just aren't good enough. Yeah, they still pack the stadium. They still pack the United Center. But, yeah, there's not a lot of conversation. I think this team going forward will be interesting now that GARPAC, that's what they called Gar Forman, the general manager, John Pax, executive vice president of basketball operations. They came up with the title. They called those two guys GARPACs, and they kind of embody the negativity of the last 4, 5, 6, 7 seasons since the Derrick Rose thing and the injury and everything didn't really work out. So I think Bulls fans are hungry for the new leadership to do something. But, yeah, I mean, basketball, yeah, you know.
Well,
that
one
says it
thing.
all, right?
Well, last thing, Siafa. I remember we were up on the Art Museum steps the year of the Mitch Trubisky draft when it was here in Philly, and I remember sitting in that room. We were the only podcast that was actually live up on top where all the players were, and everybody else was on the Parkway. And when they picked Mitch Trubisky, the people from Chicago that I know, a lot of the local sports guys there, went crazy. So I immediately put them on the air just to get the reaction because that was the big story. And it was incredible how even the inside Chicago sports people had no clue and were stunned probably more than anybody else in that room about that selection.
Yep, I'm sitting there at my desk at work, and I'm just like, what? They did what? And there's a I guess it was ESPN had the video from the draft party with all the fan reaction, and that was the literal reaction. They did what with the second pick? First of all, you had some other talented guys there. But Deshaun Watson, what did Deshaun Watson not do in college that Mitch Trubisky did? That if you had to flip a coin, how on earth, like if it's a 50-50 proposition, how do you choose Mitch over Deshaun in that scenario?
You don't.
Forget about Patrick Mahomes. And listen, I'm not a draft Nick. I'm not a draft expert. It's not my job. But it's your job to look at these guys, put them through their paces, interview them, talk to them, dissect them. How on God's green earth did you look at those three guys and choose Mitch Trubisky over the other two?
Mm-hmm.
I know, we keep
you
opening
had two
wounds.
other guys. It's one thing if you got one of them wrong. You got two other guys wrong.
Wow.
You picked them over two other stud guys.
See, that wound will never heal in Chicago.
No.
That wound will never, ever heal.
Unless he somehow wins it all, and that might be blasphemous of me to say. But short of that, I mean, what can he do? Mahomes won a Super Bowl in his second season as a starter, right?
Yep.
Exactly.
Won MVP his first season, threw for 50 touchdowns. I mean, it's not fair to Mitch, but this isn't really about Mitch. It's about Ryan Pace, in my opinion.
And that's why, that's what's great about sports towns that they're passionate, like Chicago and Philly, Boston, you name them, that there's always going to be that one guy. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing with Foles and in this city.
And Wentz.
I mean, it becomes like an annual, all right, who's better now, Foles or Wentz?
Yeah.
And it's just like a ridiculous argument because there's, everybody loves Nick Foles because he won a Super Bowl.
And Howie Roseman always seems to be on the griddle for something.
Exactly. So I don't get that.
Crazy? Isn't that crazy? 3 years ago, he won a Super Bowl, and the venom towards Howie Roseman is, oof, man, next level.
That's the kind of stuff we love about it and we miss about sports. The venom never goes away, even when they're not playing. But when they start playing again and they stink it up, then we can have a legitimate conversation again about why Mitch Trubisky sucked in the first couple of games for the Bears.
I want more venom, less virus.
Me too.
Okay.
Exactly.
Venom over virus.
Tony, you mentioned that in one of your tweets about the fact that your Twitter is for fun and sarcasm. That's what we do, man. That's why we chose this career. That's why we're not talking about politics.
Exactly.
That's why we chose this.
Exactly right.
It's an escape.
Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together.
We're talking about practice.
We're not talking about practice. We're talking about the games, man. Penn Saucon's own Siafa Lewis now dominating the Windy City. Great to have you all, man. Thanks for popping on with us today.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. Take care. Stay safe.
You too, man. There he is. Let's
Thanks,
put our
man.
hands together. Once again, the Philly area dominating all over America,
I know.
Harry. I don't just put Philadelphia people on to have Philadelphia people on. The greatness of Philadelphia people is all over the world, Harry. We dominate every medium in this country.
And actually, you didn't even know that he was from here, did you?
I didn't know he was from Pennsauken. I knew he grew up in the area, but